What's up, gang? Welcome to Room and Board. My name's Chris George, and today we have another episode of Table Talk, inspired by the Rodney Smith series of the same name. But Rodney hasn't done one for over a year, so it's legally mine now. Rodney, if you're watching, I'll be expecting my royalty check in the mail. If you're unfamiliar, the premise is this. I'll pick a topic that has something to do with the board gaming hobby and share my initial thoughts. Then, after some very precisely algorithmically calculated amount of time, and not at all depending on the number of comments, I will follow that up with a table talk back video. And that way, to use a phrase I just came up with now, we can all participate in the conversation. So this week's topic, if you didn't guess by the title, is all about solo gaming. What's the deal with solo gaming? You'd think I'd do a lot of solo gaming since those are my jokes, and even I can't stand to be around me. But there's been a lot of talk recently by me about board games enabling you to spend time with your friends and family, to create memories, and all the wonderful things that this hobby can provide. But there's also a subsection that I haven't talked about pretty much at all, and that is the concept of solo gaming. Shout out to Dominic for this suggestion, who said, "Love my friends, but also love the experience of solo games. They're not for everyone. I've had many people tell me that games are meant to be played with other people, but there are a lot of solo gems out there. If you can enjoy playing a video game, reading a book, watching TV, etc., there's no reason that you can't enjoy board gaming alone too." And I think it's a really interesting topic to explore because I don't play solo games now. Half of the reason being because I'm lazy and don't want to set it up by myself, and half because I think the idea that games are meant to be played with others is something that I've at least perpetuated for the last couple of weeks. And perhaps that thought has been in my head and in a lot of heads for significantly longer than that. So today I want to explore it. Are board games meant to only be played with other people? And I think that question should be an immediate no. Obviously not. Play the games how you want to play them. You bought it. It's a fun hobby. And if you're having fun with the game, either playing it with others or playing it by yourself, then that's exactly the way it was supposed to be played. Is it giving you joy? Well, then you're doing it the right way. I think a more interesting question might be, what's the point of solo gaming? Or to continue along the previous line of thinking, why is there such a stigma associated with solo gaming? And maybe stigma is a wrong word because there are many sects of people who are stigmatized and who are constantly discriminated upon with a much more significant fervor. But for me, there's almost this sense of insecurity that happens when I think about playing a game by myself. That idea that if somebody walked in and caught me playing with myself, well, okay, no, that's different. But if I was caught playing a board game alone, that would be embarrassing in some way. And I wonder if that feeling is shared or if it's just me or why that's even a thing. Because I used to play solo games all the time as a kid. I remember full Saturdays when I would go downstairs in my basement and play two-handed, three-handed, four-handed games of Monopoly all day. Or Pokemon Master Trainer, where I go through the board and try to collect the exact Pokemon whose corresponding action figures I owned. When I think about it, that might have actually been my first miniatures game experience. And it's because I wanted to play these games, and nobody else in my family wanted to play them with me at the time. And so I didn't let that stop me. I just played all the parts myself. And I had a great time. This is, of course, discounting the times where my mom and dad would lock me in the attic and force me to play games of Monopoly, and I wouldn't be allowed out until I could tell them the horrible flaws of unrestricted capitalism and how trickle-down economies never really work. But I think for a lot of people, that's how they got their start into solo gaming. Not the attic thing. That was horrendous. More so because they made me play Monopoly and not because they locked me in the attic. But with their catalyst being the sudden lack of people to play with. The pandemic has been rough on a lot of people over the past 4,000 years, and it has prevented gaming groups from getting together regularly, if at all. When I posed a question to Reddit in preparation for this video, I asked them, what got you into solo gaming? And the overwhelming majority of responses, other than this one, which is great and very funny, but it boiled down to having a lack of people with whom to play, and yet still having a large collection filled with games that they wanted to enjoy. And I feel pretty privileged that the thought never really occurred to me. Maybe because I'm always vehemently forcing people to play games with me, whether they like it or not. Probably get that from my parents. They are taking a beating today. My mom is going to be so mad at me for spilling all of her very dark secrets. But naturally, it makes sense. Why shouldn't you play your games? Board games are fun, most of the time are relaxing, and so do you really need somebody else to be there to partake if those are your gaming goals? Aside from providing a way of interacting with people in a group setting or spending time with your friends, what are the other aspects of the hobby that you really enjoy? For me, I like solving puzzles. I like math, and I like that playing board games allows me to exercise those aspects of my brain in a slightly more entertaining way. Sometimes the tactile nature is the draw. There are so many people out there. Probably the second most popular answer to that Reddit thread, which I'll post a link to it in the description below, was that we spend so much time in front of our screens on a regular basis that sometimes when you get home, you don't want to sit down in front of the TV or play a video game or interact with the screen, but would rather have a tactile, screenless method of winding down. I mean, the more videos I make and edit, I can absolutely see the appeal. Because by playing a game with yourself, you can slow down, press pause on the world, and immerse yourself in a grand adventure or a simple, calming puzzle, and take it at your pace without conforming to anyone else's timeline. It's no different from doing a crossword puzzle or a Sudoku during the year when they were around. It's just that there's still this common preconception that these games are meant to be played with others, rather than just by yourself. But then I guess there also is the common preconception when you say, hey, I like board games, people assume you're talking about Monopoly or Cards Against Original Thought. And that manner of thinking doesn't really capture that this hobby is expansive and can provide so much more. But on the other hand, and there's always another hand, can a solo game really provide as rich an experience as one played against a real human? Does it feel as satisfying? I mentioned in my last table talk where we talked about games having a finite lifespan that I really enjoy games with a high level of interactivity. And naturally, you're not going to get those sorts of things in a solo experience. As someone who enjoys bluffing and bartering and negotiating around the table, these are also things that are going to be lacking from a solo game variant. Plus, there's also the sense that it takes a little bit more commitment to this relaxation than mindlessly letting a computer or video game system automate all those other things for you, and you can sit nicely curled up on a couch just mashing buttons to your heart's content, which I can definitely tell you sometimes, more often than not, kind of what I feel like doing to unwind. And there are some games, some experiences that just flat out won't work as a solo mode. There's a reason you can't play Avalon solo, or any social deduction game that's kind of in the name, or you can't play Dutch Blitz solo. Well, I mean, I guess you can. It's a different game. It's called Solitaire. And I guess that brings us to the crux, I think, of people's opinions on solo games. Solitaire. The oldest solo game that I know. I mean, I'm sure there are others, but whenever I think of the origin of solo games, I have to think of Solitaire, which is a shame because, it's boring. It sucks. It's just not fun. It's the thing you do when you're rained out at a cottage and there's no television and there's no one around or nobody who you want to talk to, and you also can't be alone with your thoughts, so you need to do something to pass the time. Or you're at work and you want to do literally anything but work, and you like the way the cards go. And I can only speak from personal experience, but just how Monopoly is synonymous with board games to some people, Solitaire is sort of synonymous with solo games. And just like Monopoly, it's not a great bar to base your opinions off of. And this might be a slightly dated opinion because there are new solo games constantly emerging, or new solo modes at least. But I think it really has taken a while for solo games to emerge as a legitimate alternative, or at least add-on, and probably contributes to the snooty looking down on that subsection of the hobby because people don't know any better. Although if there's one thing that I've learned from the internet, just because somebody doesn't know any better, that won't stop them sharing their opinion on it. Now, back in 2009, 2010, the games that were produced that had a solo mode were sitting around 8 to 10% of all the sort of games published at that time, which to me seems still pretty high. In 2015, it had jumped up to about 20%. And I'm getting this information from a 2015 Stonemaier blog, where the designer of the Automa system, Morten Monrad Peterson, talked about his process in designing an Automa for viticulture and how it related to Kickstarter in particular. And since then, it seems like the amount of solo modes being included in various games has only increased. I'm not saying this article is the catalyst, but I'm saying since 2015, we have seen a continued trend towards increasing. There are numerous geek lists online devoted to identifying which games have an Automa sort of system attached to them with a very strict criteria. I saw one that had 238 titles, and I'm sure there are numerous lists on the subject. And this is really fascinating to me, because I assume that the rise of solo games kind of went hand in hand with the rise of cooperative games. People realizing, oh yeah, I don't need another player to work out this puzzle with me. I can just play Pandemic with as many characters as I want and try to beat it myself. And maybe this did impact the rise of the solo experience, I'm not sure. But there are also a ton of great games out there that aren't cooperative and have benefited, I assume, from including a solo variant in their box. Otherwise, you might as well save the printing. I think it's safe to say that having a solo mode certainly doesn't hinder a game's popularity. And I think the most telling statistic out of this is that out of the top 100 games on BoardGameGeek, 45 of them have a dedicated solo mode or variant attached to them, and 29-ish of them aren't cooperative. There is an ever-growing market of people who want to play a game by themselves, being a loner who enjoys being a loner. And even if you don't primarily play solo, why wouldn't you want another way to experience your purchase? Isn't a game inherently more valuable if it can serve you in a number of different ways? Well, that might be a larger question altogether. And I guess we still haven't answered the question, are board games better with other people? Or are they meant to be played with others? And while my personal preference is still to play with other people, my solo experiences haven't been great, although much of that, I'm sure, is due to my last solo experience being the Seventh Continent, and I'm scarred for life forever. But I really don't think that those sorts of questions matter. Maybe what matters are the additional options, the additional opportunities, the additional ways to create fun and enjoyment for all sorts of people, and not just the ones who you normally interact with. And hey, if you've never gotten into the hobby because you have severe anxiety, or you're an introvert who prefers not to be around people when they want to wind down, and social commitments take a lot out of you, or you have a physical ailment that makes it difficult to sit at a table for long periods of time, or forces you to move more slowly and you feel anxious about taking that extra time at the table, whatever the reason, and there are many, maybe this is the time to open the floodgates to your new favorite hobby. Because we're currently living in a golden age of solo gaming, and it can only go up from here. Or devolve into every game trying to capitalize on this solo gaming trend, and cramming each game so full of bloat that it detracts from the game itself and only contributes to the noise, and all the great solo games get lost into the ether forever. But somehow I think the chances of that are pretty slim. Not none. But pretty slim. And if you've never tried solo gaming before, I'm sure you have one on your shelf somewhere, so maybe try it out. You might be pleasantly surprised. I think I'm going to end it there for this video. Make sure to write your thoughts in the comments on this subject. I very much look forward to hearing them and talking about them in our follow-up Table Talk back video, whenever that may be. And be sure to leave a like or share this video to various Facebook groups or whatever if you think it'll help generate some sort of interesting discussion. But that seems like a nice place to stop for now, as the rainy thunderstorm starts and I get out my cards to play solitaire. Not Wingspan. I left the Automa cards at home because I got too many expansions in that one box. Rookie mistake. Anyway, once again, my name's Chris George. I don't have a catchphrase, but thanks for watching.